I think I'm ready. We're just going to kind of wing it.
Yep, sounds great.
Cover up. Take two.
All right.
Anti-corruption podcast. So here's what I'm trying to do here. So I'm Jake Oxendale with the Anti-Corruption Party. This is Joey Smyth.
I'm running for State House, District 30A, and I am endorsed by the DFL.
Okay. So what we're going to be doing here is I've kind of got a website that I kind of want to promote and get out there and show people how it works. You obviously have a campaign that you're running, so you're trying to kind of get your message out. So I think what we're going to do is we're just going to talk politics for a little bit.
Yep.
And then we're going to kind of go into kind of some of the tools that I'm building and how we're going to make some of this stuff work.
Sounds great.
I got another tab here. This is your district, right?
Yes, so this is SD30. The 30A part is you cut it like Otsego in half, and then I take the, Hallerville, St. Michael, Hanover, and the Rockford Township part.
Okay, so like this southern area right here? Okay, cool. So what can you tell me about this area?
So specifically, the District 30A and SD30 as a whole is actually one of the fastest growing regions in the country, population.
I believe it. They're putting up houses like crazy here.
I mean, you even have the Costco coming in, and usually a lot, follows that. I actually learned today that they're projecting that by 2040 the population will double.
Interesting.
So,
and just this district?
Wright County.
Okay.
But
I believe that.
Yeah, SD30. Big part of it is in Wright County. So
yeah, when I moved into this house 5 years ago, across over by the baseball field, there was nothing there. And now it's just, there's got to be over 100, 200 houses there.
Well, and the houses are popping up so fast and the population keeps coming. I think it was, since 2010, 64% of the population has moved here since 2010. So this is, not a lot of long-term people are here. So this area is big to change, basically. A lot of new people.
Do you think that's going to affect voting?
I do think so. I mean, with more people, generally you're going to have more like industries, more like retail. And generally as, the more people condense, we do shift to a more left, leaning district. And, we'll probably end up looking more like a Maple Grove area eventually. Where
I kind of feel like that. It's coming out this way, the gentrification.
Yes.
The taxes are going up. But
yes.
It's getting better. There's so many more, ever since we moved in here, there's so many more things. We've got more bike trails now.
Yep.
We've got this water fountain thing right in the community center area, or splash pad, whatever they call them. There's all kinds of stuff to do. So, I mean, if you take advantage of that stuff, I feel like it's great, but you're also splitting up these massive properties where you have farmers who, they're farming that land. Correct me if I'm wrong, that's cheaper taxes. Is that right?
Yes, generally because they've been here longer, the taxes are a bit different.
But now you're splitting that up into a whole bunch of different subdivided properties, and each individual property might have overall higher property taxes, and that's allowing us to invest more in the communities and building these schools. Because we moved to this area because of the school. Yeah, that was the main thing. Was it had one of the nicest schools. We didn't want to go fully private school. We wanted her to, I'm a public school kid. I think that I believe in the public education system. I think it could use some work from time to time. But I think we wanted her to have a similar experience to what we had, which was public education. So this was one of the best schools in the state, next to I think Maple Grove, and it was a little bit cheaper to live here. So
I mean, from what we're seeing, and I graduated from STMA in 2022, so 4 years ago, I guess now. Geez, I'm getting old. But the truth is, with all these people moving here, the school systems do need real resources, and that's not a area specific, but here it is more noticeable. I mean, ISD 728, which is Elk River and Rogers. They need to, they're debating on building an entirely new school because they are very over capacity in their high school. SDMA just passed a levy because of how many new people are, coming to the school because they don't have the resources in the teachers because the state hasn't given the money to reflect that increase in population compared to some other areas. And the issue is statewide, the education system is a mess. And basically what happens is with, property taxes, as you were saying, we're forcing local cities to pick up the tab, basically, when generally this is supposed to be a state-funded thing.
It kind of sucks because I used to live in White Bear, and at that time we lived in it was a retirement community. They were very conservative, and they didn't want to have the higher property taxes. Now, of course, it's White Bear, so it's fancy, and there were higher taxes anyway. It had a pretty good school system, but I also felt like if you didn't have it's not exactly fair to the people that are retiring. So like when you move to a place like St. Michael, it's like a lot of, I think the consideration is really all going towards that school. That's kind of why everybody's here, and it's a great place for that. So not only does my kid go here, but my wife works at the district. So it's just like a block down the street, and it's such a great school, such a great curriculum. Like I love the teachers. Everything's been awesome here. So I'm loving it the way it is, but I don't feel like it's a very conservative area. But you look at these maps, and historically speaking, it has been a pretty conservative area.
No, and I completely agree with that. I mean, so I think part of that is because, we're still following the trends from when this was very much a rural area, where I would now say we're more of a suburban area. And I think we tend to vote that way is because a lot of, people who are running don't really give the opportunity to talk to a lot of people. Whereas, so a Republican would treat this area as like an automatic win. So they're not going to put much resources into making sure they win, where the Democrats, then it's an automatic loss, so they're also not going to put any resources in.
Okay.
And that's kind of where my campaign is going to be a little bit different, because we want to hit every single house. We want to give every voter, every person a chance to talk about some of their concerns, because the truth is, we're all neighbors, and generally we do have a lot of the same concerns, like, where's my money going? Is this money going to our school district that I want my children to succeed in? Right? And
I feel like at the local level it does. Like I feel like local taxes are the good taxes.
Yep.
Whenever I see the property taxes, the levy or whatever with the school, it's like I'm usually in favor of that stuff. I think where I get lost with the taxes is like the federal level. It's just like, okay, we're just giving money away. So at that level, I'm kind of like, I can't stand that side of it. But you have such little control over this. I mean, obviously your district isn't going to have much of a say in like federal budget spending, but you never know.
All the states work with the federal government. I mean, we are in a union, but you are right there. We don't have control over the federal budget as much. But for the state taxes, what I'm actually trying to do is we're looking into how can we implement like an accountability board. So basically we can look up like a super easy, accessible thing where you can look up, hey, this is what we pulled in the taxes as a state, and this is where these taxes are actually going, right? Because I'm sure you look at your taxes and, you see that you're paying, say, $1,000 to whatever it is, right? Do you know where that $1,000 is actually going?
BlackRock.
Yeah, I mean.
I don't know, probably Israel.
Yeah. But
who knows? They can't pass their own audits.
No, and
it's just like it kind of blows my mind at a federal level that they're picking on states for fraud over federal spending. And I look back at this and I'm like, okay, so COVID happened.
Yep.
We cut regulations to get money to organizations faster. A bunch of people took advantage of that. Fraud, right?
Yep.
So fraud's never good, but you have like a lot of people who committed that same exact fraud that Amy Bach did with the Feeding Our Future. A lot of the people that committed that same exact fraud from the same exact deregulation all got pardons from Trump.
Yep.
And how people are missing that point kind of blows my mind a little bit, because it's like they're so hypocritical in how they're accusing our state, which has, from my understanding, a statistically low average for fraud. They're accusing us of having a problem with fraud, and then at the same time also the problem with the illegal immigration, where it's like we also have a record low statistic. So
I can expand on that fraud real quick if you want, real quick.
I know I just threw a lot of stuff at you.
No, you're good. So basically, fraud, you are right. We are actually one of the lower, statistics for fraud that's actually happening, right? But a lot of that is we're more visible because the DFL, or Democrats in this case, have actually put a lot of, protections and programs into place to detect this fraud in the first place.
Sure.
And the truth of the matter, since 2024, since the state house has been split, A lot of these programs have been underfunded and understaffed. And granted, that's not a problem with just, Minnesota fraud departments and stuff like that. That's kind of a universal government thing. There's a lot of programs that are underfunded and stuff like that. But if we want to prevent fraud, we should, fund these programs, because unfortunately nothing works for free in this country.
Can I interrupt for a second?
Yeah.
So the state auditor position's up for, there's a whole bunch of people running for that.
Yes, there's 4 state auditors.
So would they put, my understanding is when they cut the regulations at the federal level, they put the State Board of Education in charge of how the money would get spent. And that's where some of the fraud, from my understanding, where some of that was. But also, why wouldn't you have like the state auditor in charge of that?
The state auditor, from what I know, and I'm not, I don't know everything about the government just yet, and I probably never will if I'm going to be realistic. They work closely with them, but the state auditor is only one person,
I guess, yeah.
You can't,
how are you gonna have one person go and make sure that every food, every meal that they're claiming is real, makes it into the mouth of a child? It's like, I get it.
It's a very tall order, per se.
So maybe that's why they would go with the Department of Education. Did they do that? Is that how it worked in every state?
I don't know about every state.
State has a Department of Education, right?
Yeah, no. I think...
Well, because you have the meals, I think a lot of that went to the schools for meals and stuff, but anyway, I think like it's always a good thing to be looking after fraud.
No, I just don't see it as a major issue, but I think a lot of people around here might. So the reason why I think it's a major issue, because even if it's, a relatively small number, this is still money out of people's hands that they were paying into taxes, right? Yeah. Where I think everyone can agree.
I was just complaining about that a minute ago.
Yeah.
I have no idea where it goes.
Yes.
It goes into some, okay.
Yeah, so, you are going to get taxed regardless, but if you're getting taxed, I'm sure most people would prefer, I'd rather have this tax go to a program that actually benefits people.
Yeah, it'd be great if it was feeding kids.
Yeah.
If it was working the way it was supposed to,
And that's where we as, Democrats want to actually expand some of these programs. Right now, there's talk about making a Minnesota, fraud department that manages everything. And both sides, Republican or Democrat, are discussing this. But it's kind of the cost benefit.
I feel like it would only work if they did that together, yeah.
The issue is what's the cost benefit ratio? Because, yes, it's great to prevent fraud, but can we make sure, we're not spending, say, $500 million and only catching, 10 million, right? We just want to make sure that benefit is there. Whereas the programs we've had in the past were working until the cuts to funding were made. And what's interesting is to reinstate that funding, Democrats have actually pushed bills across the aisle, and Republicans have blocked it in the state house. So
why do you think that is?
So why I think, you hear Republicans that are their big thing is fiscally conservative, right?
Yeah.
Cutting corners and saving money it's great if we can do it, right? But, until we cut this, fraud spending, there wasn't really fraud. So, you see, well, there was, but...
So it's just, you're saying that there isn't enough of it to justify a whole department of fraud?
Yes, but then all of a sudden, fraud happened because we cut these corners.
Here's the problem is, that's all state money you're talking about, right?
Yep.
Okay, so this wasn't state money that was stolen, it was federal money.
Yep.
So would a committee like that even apply? Would we even, if we had a state fraud department, would they even be looking at federal spending? Why isn't that the federal government's job?
So they would, because how it works is they kind of just give, the money to the state, because, the federal government has the money, but they don't have boots on the ground in Minnesota, right? There's people in Minnesota that probably have a better idea of what's going on, right?
You think the Department of Education?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the challenge there is, is it a blank check, and should we have measures to prevent fraud? I say we should completely do so, because we want these funds to be managed well, right? We want the money to go where it's supposed to go and actually help people. But the question is, why would Republicans block that if they're saying the same thing? because it wasn't a problem until the funding got cut by the Republicans. So
yeah, it kind of seems like they're going to just kind of ride out that problem and be like, well, the fraud, but do nothing about it.
Yep.
And that's frustrating. And so that's where being on your seat would make a difference.
Yep.
Okay. How did your opponent vote on that? Was it
So he voted Republican lines.
just stood in line with him, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I have an Excel sheet of a bunch of different bills.
See, that's really interesting that they care so much about fraud, but then they vote against
Yep.
even an excessive measure of fighting fraud.
Yep. I mean, it just makes you wonder what is truly a talking point,
Yeah.
Where I think it catches up with the narrative if politics as a whole.
Or who's really committing the fraud?
Yes, exactly.
It's kind of suspicious. If you ask me, like, that's just as suspicious as like the, how, what's her name, Nancy Mace came out with the, this is kind of a heated topic, I guess, but it was the sexual abuse in Congress. Like, they have to report it, or they have to make it public. And it was kind of, everybody criticized it and said it was going to lead to people's names getting out there, and but they shut it down, and she kind of went on this high horse, is like, well, look at all these people who voted against this.
Yeah.
But it's kind of almost like the opposite. It's like, I mean, everybody wants to know if their elected representatives have been accused of sexual harassment, right? Everybody, I think, thinks they have a right to that information. There should be some kind of, I think like in general we can agree that that's where we're at. Maybe there were problems with the bill.
Yeah.
Do you think there might have been problems with the bill? That Republicans legitimate? Have you ever seen a Republican come up with a legitimate reason to not vote for it?
Not too much, but there's been numerous bills on this. And the problem where you have a bill that there's a problem that everyone agrees on, right?
Yeah.
But then they add like 6 million things to the bill.
Sure.
And then all of a sudden it's like,
omnibus or whatever.
yeah, it's like, oh, hey, we all agree on the original issue, but now there's 20 more issues in the bill.
Weed in there.
Yeah, like something like that. Because that happens at the state level too.
Huh.
So that's kind of why I would like to bring back, some accountability with that. Let's vote on the issues that people really do care about without trying to sneak in 20 other different issues, so we can actually work together on the issues that matter together, not just party lines,
So to vote against fraud, I'm still having trouble with this, because if all the Republicans voted against fraud, to me that's really suspicious.
I don't think it's...
And you said they were coming up with this bill together, though, right?
No, so this was more of a Democrat-focused bill.
Okay.
But what I believe happened, and mind you, I will say this, Democrats are not perfect, right? I think it's important to mention
I think
this.
there's probably a spectrum in both parties of good and bad.
What I think happened is everyone had these really good intentions, and we could all support that. But then the same thing happened on the Democrat side, where we added a bunch of, random stuff, whatever that might be.
Yeah.
So I think, as a state and even country, we need to get away from that. I mean...
Do you think there's anything worth negotiating into a bill like that? I mean, are there any causes that you're just like that passionate about, where you're just like, well, we need to... I don't know. I'm trying to think of a good hypothetical. But it's like an issue that you feel so strongly about passing that you would have to sneak it into another bill just to vote for it. Like if the Republicans came up with something that was like, you kind of like it, but you want to use it as a negotiating tactic to be like, okay, well, you can have this, but I kind of also want this.
Create some leverage. I think there are scenarios where that could be.
I feel like that's how those scenarios unfold.
It's just... It's never like a small thing, and then it's always, oh, so you're doing that for that one person. Can I do that too? And then we all just jump in.
And I think like one bill should be worth one thing, but like maybe there should just be more trust in just like separating these bills and just kind of having a handshake agreement and be like, okay, well, my district's kind of 50-50 on this issue. We can compromise here, but we're really about this. And, that's something that like, if you can maybe get them to break down a little bit. Yeah, like, do you feel like the negotiating, are they just not negotiating at all? Or is it the party divide that intense that...
Definitely. So party divide, especially at the federal level, is that intense. It's a little different statewide.
I see it nationally for sure.
statewide, it is there. I mean, they had to fight to get the budget approved. Like they had to really compromise and,
the state budget.
Yeah, so
Okay.
when the state house got split 50-50,
What was the split on?
what do you mean? Like
What was the issue?
just the state budget, like what are we going to fund?
We just couldn't pass the budget. Okay.
It took us a little longer than it usually would because no party controlled it.
I'm so
right?
used to this at a federal level
Yeah.
happening, like where there's some political issue that, like the SAVE Act, like they shut the government down over the SAVE Act. But in Minnesota, you're just saying like they just couldn't come to an agreement on that.
Yeah, and I mean that's just the larger issue of like the federal politics, shifting downwards.
So they're 50-50
Exactly
on the
50-50.
budget, and for a while they just couldn't pass it.
Yep. I mean, they did come to an agreement. They did compromise on our current
caved?
budget. I think both sides caved on numerous things. Like if you look at our budget surplus, we were, I feel like 2 billion something years ago. Now we're at like 300 billion surplus, or 300 million. Sorry.
I wish.
Yeah, I wish we were at 300 billion.
3 billion. So every year we've gotten like an extra 3 billion.
It might have been smaller. I'd have to look up the exact number.
Is that like a rolling number, or is that like every year that's how much extra we have?
This was like every year.
Compounding on every year? Okay.
Now our surplus is definitely down. We're not in a deficit at all. But we're not.
Why is that?
That that is a very big topic. I mean, you have numerous programs.
I suppose.
I mean, think of anything you need to run a state or a country in this case, infrastructure upgrades, education, whatever you can think of, there was some negotiation on it.
Yeah.
Like healthcare with the, MN Care, trying to make healthcare a little bit affordable. We have to spend a little bit more money to do that. Stuff like that.
Whatever happened to the federal Medicare thing? Is that still shut down?
The federal Medicare?
They tried to shut off our Medicare for, like, J.D. Vance tried to shut it down right after the State of the Union. I feel like that wasn't going to go far, but, like, is that still a thing?
Well, when the government was shut down?
Yeah, are they still trying to withhold Medicare?
What happened was, I'm sure you guys have all heard of the Big Beautiful Bill.
Yeah.
What happened with that is basically Medicare and Medicaid got major cuts to it, right? Where we are just kind of starting to feel the effects of it, because what happened is it wouldn't affect everyone right away, but as soon as the new year started, 2026, people's insurance premiums, went up. And the reason why that happened is because just because you made cuts to healthcare, that doesn't mean any less people are going to the doctors or getting sick, right?
Yeah.
There's still people who are needing to get this healthcare. And if these people can't pay, someone else is going to have to pick up the tab, right? And what happens is the people who currently have private insurance, these hospitals would just pass the cost to those insurance companies. And I don't think there is really any example of corporations in history of willingly taking more cost, and not raising the cost to the customer. Like if they have to spend more.
How do you think you really bring down the healthcare costs? And can you do this at a state level? Because I've often wondered, like, why the hell do we just, if everyone in Minnesota is so liberal and progressive, why don't we just make our own healthcare system?
Yeah, I mean.
And just quit paying into Medicare?
So that would be, you'd have to do years and years of like compromise and research. Yeah,
I think that part of the ACA forbids states from doing stuff like this.
So
legally, I don't think it's possible. I'm just assuming.
Yes,
so I really have nothing to back that up.
I'm willing to bet that there is like way smarter people than me who are looking into this, even on both sides. If that would be a possibility, because both sides, no matter the party, agree that healthcare is kind of a broken system.
Yeah.
In this country. But there has been progress on, a lot of things. I don't think like a single payer healthcare system is possible for our state.
Like Medicare for all?
Yes, okay. I do not think that is achievable for our state.
Not at a state level.
No.
Maybe a public option.
Yeah, and we could start by maybe giving the state the ability to negotiate with pharmaceutical companies on prescription costs.
Yeah, because it'd be awesome if you could just go buy the state healthcare plan.
Yeah.
And just pay a premium to them instead of paying it to, some for-profit company. Mm-hmm. And or having to do it through your employer. Like, that's something that drives me nuts. It's like, everyone's like, why do you want the government involved in your healthcare? I'm like, why do you want your employer involved in your healthcare? Like, don't you see problems with that? Mm-hmm. And, I mean,
There's two pieces of legislation that I'm actually researching currently on how we could do something like that. So we have a thing in Minnesota called the Drug Accountability Board or something like that. And basically, if there is a certain prescription drug that, raised its price by 10% in a 12-month period, they are required to post that drug, to this form. And this is all information you can see online. It is a little difficult to access. But basically, it shows you what drugs prices are increasing by that amount, in that 12-month period. And if it's a, 24-month period, the threshold is 16%. Basically, I would like to expand that to kind of why are we increasing the prices, right?
Yeah.
And then the second part of the thing is I want kind of like a dashboard or an accountability dashboard for insurance companies where we could legislate on why an insurance company is denying a certain procedure for, a person and have, these denial rates publicly accessible. Not for like each individual, but like, hey, say this health insurance company is denying 40% of the claims.
Which one is that?
That was just a hypothetical.
Oh, I know. Okay.
Yeah. And the idea is, if all this information is accessible, and you see a company is denying 40% of the claims that a doctor says you need as a person, you'd think, maybe I should try to get a different insurance if I could. And then also let's try to look into how we can have like a state option, because if we do have a bigger, if the state has a bigger negotiating power with a lot of these companies, generally they would be able to bring down the cost. Because if more people are choosing, this program or whatever, for prescriptions or whatever, the state would then have more leveraging power because the more people that need it, then all of a sudden the more customers that
they'd have to fight for it. Yeah, that was what the whole point was of making a marketplace, was you're supposed to make them choose, but then you just make them choose between the same plans as with the different companies. So you're just giving the profit to
and
one of three different companies, and all you can base the quality of that care off of is who denies the most claims. And most people don't even get that option because they just have to get whatever their employer offers. So how does anybody not think we should just tear that whole system down and just redo the whole thing? Why can't we get some combination of Republicans and Democrats to just sit down and come up with a plan? Because Republicans have nothing. I've never once heard a Republican suggest a single solution to healthcare.
Yeah, because
and then the Democrats are 50-50. Like, some of them really want to reform it, and some of them are clearly taking money from this interest group. So, and they just want to keep it that way.
Yeah.
So nothing ever happens.
Here's my 2 cents. There's definitely, a lot of lobbying by pharmaceutical and healthcares that put money into, the campaign's pockets, right? Whereas what we should do is the reason why, Republicans and even some Democrats don't discuss it is because I believe there is kind of an artificial divide. And what I mean by that is, if you're a Republican or if you're independent or Democrat, whatever you are, the truth of the matter is generally you are probably going to agree on a lot of the same wants that a Democrat or a Republican would want. Because most people, you probably want a good home to live in, a safe community, a good school for your kids to go to, right? The American dream, so to speak. Pretty much everyone agrees that this is the goal, right? But you have people at the top, and what I mean the top is super rich people who kind of create almost like a culture war type thing, where you have this truly artificial divide over issues that,
it's
truly
like a class system.
Yes, a class system.
Like if you're not in the Epstein class,
And the Trump tax cuts that happened last year that are going into effect, you will not, the average person will not get richer. You as, an individual, and I'm assuming you are probably not making over $1 million a year. If you are not at that threshold, you are actually paying more into taxes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's the people that got the cut and then they increase the spending.
Yep.
They're either going to print more money or they're going to tax it on us.
The tax. So what happened with the taxes is they are taxing.
Excuse me.
They're taxing the lower class, more than they are the upper class, the rich people. So the tax cuts that they said that happened really just help the upper echelons of society. Whereas it's my belief that you as the person who's on the ground and working and doing all this stuff, you probably need a tax cut more than a lot of wealthy millionaires or billionaires, right? Because does a billionaire truly, as a human, is their needs really any different from yours? They just need a house, they just need, food, they need all that sort of stuff. But do they need billions of dollars to do so? No. And that's why...
Tax them. 100%. I want it all.
Truthfully, I don't think taxing them is the problem. The problem is the loopholes, right?
Yeah, because you could just tax them all day long if you don't close the loophole.
So how it works is all these super wealthy people, they just use the loopholes to not pay taxes.
Yep.
Whereas someone like Elon Musk, their net worth is, I don't know what his net worth is right now. It's probably like $400 billion, right? Technically, he makes $0 in income. And in a state like Minnesota and most and other places around the country, income is the biggest things that tax, right? And then what they do is with their expenses, they just, here's my hypothetical assets on paper, because if he tried to sell all of his stocks in, Tesla or PayPal or whatever it is, right? Those companies would collapse.
He puts it up as collateral for the loan.
Yep.
Lives off the loan.
And you cannot tax.
And then it looks like he shows a loss.
Yep.
Because he borrowed money.
Because you can't tax.
The only way to pay back the loan is to sell off the stock. So.
Yep. And currently you cannot tax debt, which I do think is a good thing. We don't want to everyone's debt should not be taxed, because that would be really bad for a lot of people, right?
You could tax the stocks that are going to him, because that's his income. That's his pay package.
What I would do, and granted I do have to look into this a lot more, this is more of just a general idea.
But that's what you were saying, is just make them pay the taxes.
Yes, but the question is how you do that.
Close these fucking loopholes.
So you probably would need to look at as an unrealized gains tax at a certain threshold, right? What that threshold would be, I do not know. But
unrealized gains means a wealth tax.
Kind of. So unrealized gains is if you have stocks in the stock market, right? And that money is just sitting there. It might be making you money on paper, or it might be losing. You haven't sold it, so that's just unrealized gains.
But you don't get taxed until you sell it.
Yes. But if they never sell it, you're never going to get taxed, right? So you have to kind of look into a system of how do we make sure that these people who have significant amounts of, assets, how do we make sure that these, assets are actually being taxed in a fair manner?
Yeah.
Because they still do use the services that, the government provides, but they don't pay their fair share of taxes, basically, If their house caught on fire, they'd still be using the fire department to come put out the fire, you know?
Still use the roads.
Yes, they still use the roads, whatever it is.
From having an educated society.
And I'm not saying, we need to make sure all their wealth is taken or whatever, but let's just make them pay a fair share, right?
Yeah.
Because governments, nationally, state, local, they all need more money. That is the truth.
And we need lower taxes.
Yes,
for real,
exactly.
Because it's hard to live. It's so many people are struggling right now, and then they you just think that those people that are struggling are paying more money in taxes than Elon Musk, and it's just absurd. There's no way. There used to be times throughout history where wealthy people took pride in paying taxes, and I think we need to get back to that culturally and show some respect to the people out there that are paying their taxes.
Yeah, I mean.
Maybe that's something that could be kept track of here. Eventually, we might get into keeping track of organizational corruption, because the corporate corruption probably just as much of a problem as like the political corruption.
Yep.
Obviously, the connection between the two is what I'm after
Citizens
here.
United kind of got us into this mess. But, the economic, downfall, in my opinion, kind of started around Reagan. I'm sure you've heard the term Reaganomics.
Yeah.
And that's the idea that the rich people are providing the jobs and the resources needed for everyone to succeed. Which, in a way, that is true. They are the ones, who are running these companies, and therefore they are technically providing the jobs, right? But it is now 2026. Reagan was the president in the 1980s. We have seen that wage growth and stuff like that has not kept up with the cost of living. You look at student debt, right? The cost of college since then has gone up hundreds of %, and then wage growth, you say at like 45%. These are all numbers that I don't have memorized, but like you can look at the graph and it is very true. It's the same with housing, same with pretty much every margin of cost of living. It has gone up, not comparable to wage growth. And so I would say maybe let's relook at that,
So life's just gotten harder and harder and harder since Reagan.
Yes, because
I believe it.
We've got, given tax cuts to riches and, rich people and corporations and stuff like that. And the mentality is we're the ones taking all the risk, right? So we should, make sure we're getting paid more. But then how come every time we have like a depression or a recession or whatever it is, generally the government is there to bail them out because they are too big to fail? If you are taking all the risk, but then...
Yeah, no, I've always been like, dude, sometimes you need to fail. Epstein was behind that shit. Like, he worked at Bear Stearns before the financial collapse.
I didn't know that, actually.
Yeah, he worked there. Around '08, too. He was one of the people that would have been making executive decisions on, like, how to... I forget what they're called. It's a very real possibility that he was one of the people that came up with that. And later on, you get an email between him and Peter Thiel and... I want to say it was like Netanyahu or something.
Yeah.
It's just some crazy three people, like, and they're just talking about how, like, capitalism and democracy aren't compatible, and that, like, democracy is this failed experiment, and, basically they're talking about collapsing society and then buying everything back up.
Interesting.
For less. So, and it's kind of been going towards that a little bit. I don't know. Like, I've had that vibe that maybe, like, whenever there is a collapse like '08, like, there were a lot of people that made a lot of money from that.
Yep.
And you can make money from a collapse. A lot of people, if you don't understand stocks, you can short a stock and make money. It's complicated, but, like, you can do it.
The 2008 collapse is interesting because you had massive government bailouts, right? And then, but also certain, like, bank executives are still making record bonuses and stuff like that. Whereas their businesses is actually failing, and they would go bankrupt if it wasn't for the the taxpayer.
And that was because they didn't want the economy to collapse. It was like, well, how do you know they didn't have that all worked out beforehand? Just crashed the economy, plunged a bunch of people into debt, poverty, made them foreclose on their house. Came along later and bought it up cheaper. Did you know J.D. Vance has investments in corporations that specifically buy up distressed farmland?
Oh, I did not know that.
He was a big proponent of the USAID cuts, which targeted the soybean shortage, which led to a 30% reduction in soybean farms, which is now leading to, 6 months later, farmers going bankrupt. And then those venture capital companies that are coming in that paid to get somebody like J.D. Vance in, basically they're reaping the benefits of that by buying up the distressed farmland. That's something that I think speaks to the conservatives of this area. Because there is still a lot of farmland here.
There are.
It's like houses everywhere, and then all of a sudden, boom, farm. It's like for this whole district.
I mean, the truth is, farmers are our backbone of America. I mean, that's no different here.
Well, it's a big part of the economy.
I mean, well, we all need food to eat. Like,
well, and you'd think that China would need soybeans.
They do.
We shouldn't need to have a tariff on that.
No.
What did we benefit from that, other than who got rich off of this in Trump's administration? that's another example of them profiting off of some type of collapse. And
that's the truth. I mean, that's kind of what I, said before of like there is an artificial divide of, top versus the bottom, basically, where the tariffs do benefit the top people, but then they hurt the 99.9%, the rest of us, right?
Yep.
Where it's my belief that the government should be beholden to the people. Like, the people are the one who are putting the representatives in the government, so the government should be held accountable to the people, right? Yep. Because it's called public service for a reason.
Sure.
It is our job to serve the public, basically. It's not our job to make a career out of it. It's not our job to be, get rich from it and, make it of how much power can I get, right? Where as a representative, my goal is I want to help my district. I want to help people.
Sorry.
You're good. I want to help people as much as I can. And I think this is the best way to do it because I think there's a lot of frustration from both Democrats and Republicans in the area that, your current politicians aren't listening, right?
Honestly, if you really think about people and try to consider the people that aren't very political, most people see through it, I think, around here. They kind of just are just like, well, they're both fucked. So, I think if you can offer them something different, I think the biggest advantage is to tell them, like, I'm not taking money from super PAC.
No, and I'm not. So the only money I've gotten is just been from a few individuals who have believed in my cost. And
Grassroots.
Yep. Yeah. And perfect. My biggest donation has been $100.
That's great.
And to me, $100 is like, oh my God, thank you so much, right?
It's surprising how that can go a long way.
Yeah.
Too. And then you compare that to like how are some of these people up to like millions and millions of dollars, and they walk away from these campaigns with millions, and it's like, well, you didn't need to even raise all that money, like.
Because the sucky part for my campaign and all campaigns, we do need some money to function, right?
Yeah.
Where depending on how much money I do raise, I want to focus more on events and stuff like that for people. Because I want people to have fun with this, to show that politics isn't some terrible thing. And granted, it kind of is sometimes, a lot of the time, actually. But, well,
there's a side to it that I think people don't understand can be productive.
Yeah.
I think the key to finding that side is to find the people that aren't taking that money.
Yep.
And if you just focus on that, whether they're Democrat or Republican, if you find the people that are running a grassroots campaign, like you just said, you're going to find that those people make sense. What they're saying makes sense because they're out to represent you. Because if you're the one that's giving them $100, then they owe it to you. But if you go and take hundreds of millions of dollars from, Elon Musk, it's like, you don't think he's going to expect favors?
Yeah.
And now that guy's got all of our social security information.
Because my campaign is, if you give me money, if you don't give me money, I am still going to try to look out for your best interests.
Yeah.
You are my neighbor. We might not be friends. Yep. We might not even, see eye to eye on some issues.
You represent these people.
Yes.
So what do these people want, though? I mean, like, what do you feel like this area? I feel like this is the outer suburbs of the cities.
Yes.
So you get some people from the cities that want to kind of get away from the noise. They want to come out here. It's kind of a battleground for left and right.
It's a growing suburban area. And, with that, we have a lot of new people coming in. So truthfully, the big thing is just how do we make the cost of living affordable? That is truly what matters to the most of the people. So how do we focus on the schools for new people that are coming here who just want their children to have a good education? Do we, how do we make healthcare, more affordable? So like an ambulance thing doesn't bankrupt a family, right?
Sure. You said you have a copy of this map on your site. Right?
Yeah.
What was the site again?
It should just be smythforstatehouse.com.
Smythforstatehouse.com.
Okay.
Then where would that be?
Probably just scroll down. There you go.
Awesome. I'll make this a little bigger.
Yes. It's a weird map. The cutoff for Otsego is
river.
The cutoff for Otsego is a little weird.
Is this the Crow?
Yes.
Okay. I like going. Have you ever gone kayaking?
Not on the Crow River, but,
I like to get on, like, right here. You can sit on this for like 6 hours.
Yeah.
It takes you out. We used to live in Dayton. We used to live like, right down here by that church. And you could get on this river. And so, like, we could spend a whole day just getting on right here and just, like, kayaking all the way down to the Mississippi, and then we'd get off right at our house. I love this area. It's, like, gorgeous.
It is a nice area, like, and it has a lot of opportunities for a lot of people.
Yeah.
It's just, let's make sure that, me as a representative for, a government, if I get elected, how can I expand the opportunities for as many people as possible? How can I help you as an individual who lives in this district?
Sure.
That is what I am trying to do.
Do you feel like if, like, one of the things, I'm going to back up a little bit. Okay, so when I first got involved with the DFL this year, I've been involved before. I kind of got out of it. I got more involved this year because I wanted to find the progressive candidates.
Yep.
My strategy was, there's progressive candidates out there that I want to support, first of all.
Yep.
Just as a voter.
Yep.
But also, I've had this idea for about 10 years now. This idea goes back to, I'm just going to say it. It kind of goes back to the Bernie Hillary thing.
Yep.
Not to pick on the Democrats too much, but I feel like they did rig things in favor of Hillary. They did pull strings. They even admitted this in court.
Yep.
They said we're a private organization and they can favor whoever they want. And I kind of lost a lot of respect for the Democratic Party. I felt like it's even in your name. Democratic means by way of vote. So what does that primary mean, right? That's kind of where I got out of it, just being kind of upset with how that went down. Maybe it was the other way around. Maybe I got more involved after. But I think now I'm seeing, like, sort of some of the stuff that I remember seeing before was there was a lot of disorganization.
Yep.
A lot of it was a very confusing process. And I sometimes think that it's confusing on purpose. Like the delegate process, like trying to explain that to people is tough. It's brutal. I've had to have it spelled out for me like a kindergartner, like a dozen times. And I still don't even know how it works. I'm going to this convention.
Yeah.
So
I can. Yeah. So let me try to simplify it. And you are right. It is needlessly complex.
Yeah.
So, I'm technically a delegate as well. Basically how it works is if you go to caucus, whenever, like, on an election year, and this year was February 3rd, both parties, Republican and Democrat, have them on the same day.
Yeah.
So you would go to this, like, if you really care about politics.
Do you think they do that so people can't go to both of them? I've always wondered that, because it's the only time they ever sync up the date on anything.
Well,
because they don't want people being a delegate in both races. Well, I kind of debated on going to the Republican one, but I'm like, no.
So that's kind of the hard part with the two-party system, is generally both sides have so many people that do not agree with each other, even in the party.
Yeah. I've noticed that.
But the idea is you go to the caucus that you feel that party represents you better in your beliefs.
Yeah.
And then once you go to that caucus, you have the opportunity to become a delegate. And how that works is there is a lot of math that goes into it. And the idea is that you have precincts in a district. Sure. So I am in Otsego P2A. And the idea is, hey, there is, like, let's say, for simplicity, we're just going to make fake numbers. Let's say there is 1,000 people living in District 30A, right? And then in Otsego P2A, it is 100 people. So you would think, with that being said, however many delegates that they decide, because what it is the delegates are going to vote on what the party should be focusing on, right? So from that area, Otsego P2A, with that 100 people should get about 10% of the delegates, right? Because that's, proportional representation.
Yeah. Maybe we could make I'm just going to spell this out for people, make it a little simpler, because this is why I got the whiteboard set up. I'm just going to hit record, take video. So you have like a sort of like a triangle in any campaign where you have like layers to it. And you got like voters, Then you have delegates would be the closest thing to a voter. Mm-hmm. And then you have like your candidates. So you have your primaries.
Yep.
General. And then this would be the elected position.
Yeah.
So this is kind of how I would spell it out, is like so a delegate is kind of like a person from your area, a very localized area, who is supposed to go to the political party's caucus and help represent the people of the voters to pick the right primary candidate to put in the general election to get elected.
So that's the general idea of it, but it gets more confusing.
Yeah.
So what happens is, more specifically for local and state candidates, generally that is how it works, right? Okay. Whereas, you're the voter, you're a really passionate voter, you go to this caucus, and then they give you how many delegates your precinct can have, right? And then let's say, there's 20 people who want to be a delegate from your precinct, but there's, only 10 openings, right?
Yeah, that's what happened with us. We had way more.
Then it's like, okay, how do we figure out how to, decide that? Then you kind of vote between your little group, like a mini election.
That's what we did. Yeah.
Yes. And then the delegates will then, ideally vote to endorse a candidate.
Yeah.
Right.
So what I did when we did it was a walk-in caucus, is what that's called, right? So what I did was I put up anti-corruption, and I did uncommitted. So I didn't commit to anybody because I felt like there's a couple of candidates that they were running. We'll see what happens. I figured it'd be better to be uncommitted and just kind of run under the anti-corruption.
Your values,
caucus, the values. So I thought that was kind of cool that you can run off of an initiative or of values, but it very quickly became one big long conglomerate of 5 different things. It was like, do you remember what it was? It was like anti-corruption,
it was
diversity.
It was literally 20 different issues. That was the name. I don't even know.
Yeah. But, we got the numbers, and in that group, then they get a certain number of people for the whole precinct. We had 14, I think.
Yep,
2 people that were running the vice president, the chair, and the vice chair go. So the 12 get split up between the rest of the groups, and 3 groups formed. We got 5, another group got 5, and one group got 2.
Yep.
And so of those 5, I got voted in as one of the delegates. Yep. And then there's 5 delegates from our group, but also 5 alternates. All 10 of us have to go to the convention in, when is that, May?
So you have to go to 2 conventions.
Sure.
You have the CD6 convention, which is April 25th, I believe.
Okay.
I believe it's in Buffalo, maybe Buffalo Middle School or high school, one of the 2.
With the difference being state and federal.
Well, yeah. So it's a little weird.
Sure.
So the CD6 will just kind of, decide, hey, this is going to be your, House candidate, right? That's what that's going to decide. And then the state will then be,
Is that Rochester?
Yes.
Okay.
State will then be senators and governor and that sort of stuff. And then at the state, I believe...
And then we know who all the primary candidates are.
Yeah.
That are going to be going up against the Republicans.
Kind of. How it also works, and this is where it can get confusing. So technically, my candidacy could have gone to a primary if there was 2 candidates who still wanted it.
Yep.
In my initial campaign, I was, another guy wanted it, but we kind of talked it out and agreed that I would take the candidacy and he would go to, a role with the district Democrats.
Sure.
So we kind of solved that between us. Easy, no primary now, right? But what happens is the federal, a lot of federal candidates, they all want it regardless of how the delegates vote, which then opens it up to kind of every voter then. So then that's when your primary comes, because it's not just delegates that can vote in the primaries, it's everyone. And the reason primaries are important...
At the convention, you're saying?
No, so this will be later on. So someone, I don't know when the primary would be.
Sure.
But, depending on, let's say, whatever federal candidate is endorsed at the CD6 convention. Let's say...
In Buffalo.
Yes.
Okay.
Let's say whoever wins it, one of those other candidates who did not win it is unhappy. I'm going to take it to primary now, right? And then that becomes the thing where it's like, okay, now because there is a district of, like 850,000 people, right? Because that's what CD6 is.
So for the CD6, it kind of just pick who gets it, and then if they contest it, it goes to a primary?
Yep.
So the primary really hasn't even begun?
No.
But the delegates do still play a role in...
Yes, because I know if everyone's happy and it doesn't go to the primary, then that candidate who is selected can then truly focus on like that swing voter group, right? Because what happens with the primary is generally, if it's a primary with just Democrats, you're going to focus on just Democrats, right? Because the Democrats are the ones who are actually in the primary.
Yeah.
You can focus on all the swing voters you want, but the swing voters might vote for you in the general election, but they might not even bother with a primary. So can
Republicans get involved in that if they want to do? So now, does that work the other way around?
Yep. So both sides.
Because I always thought what was odd about the difference between the two parties was you couldn't vote in a primary unless you were a registered Republican.
Yes, but if you're unregistered, you can register and then vote.
So you'd have to register as a Republican to vote?
I don't know for sure, but I believe that's how that works. Because ideally...
But you don't have to be registered as a Democrat.
Is that how
I'm pretty sure that's how... I think that's something that I remember from last time I did this, was you couldn't just go... Because I was thinking, like, why wouldn't everyone be involved in both primaries? Like, why wouldn't we be looking for the less corrupt candidate from the Republican side, too? And trying to figure out, trying to get those people in those right seats.
Because I think how it works is you could only vote in one regardless. And the idea is, if you're a Democrat voting in Republican...
Why is that?
Because it's kind of, with the two-party system, it's a little weird where in a primary you want to vote for your values, right?
Yeah.
So does it really become the Republican Party if every single Democrat votes in the Republican primary to get a more progressive candidate?
I would very willingly go to both.
Yeah.
If I knew who everyone was, and I would go to the Republican one, and I would vote for the progressive, or let's say anti-corruption candidate, the least corrupt candidate in that primary, just to get them into that seat. Like, I would love to show that kind of support for Republicans, but I don't think I'm going to go out of my way to like register as a Republican to do it. But I think as a Democrat, I'm pretty sure anybody can show up to that and actually pledge support without actually having to become a registered Democrat.
Yeah, I'm not actually sure then. I don't know.
At least I'm pretty sure that's how it used to work. And maybe that's changed, but...
Yeah, I just think the issue is then at that point, it's basically like a general election, because then there'd be nothing stopping from Republicans to doing the same.
I'm trying to drive a wedge between the two-party system here.
Yeah, I get that.
So that's where I'm saying where I'm coming from. I don't think most people wouldn't bother to do that.
Yeah.
Most people don't even give a shit about primary. No offense.
No, yeah, that's true.
Most people don't even know how it works because they probably already glazed over this and thought, okay, this is too complicated. But, it's... I don't think it's, it's something that I'm willing to learn how to do, just to get a little bit more involved, I guess. I think that's where most delegates are at. So when people show up to these areas, like, it seemed like a pretty good representation of the people in this area. Yeah. So I think it is a fair system, but it's also like, what's the point of doing all that if they can just pick a candidate at the SD6 convention? Like, shouldn't this just be based off votes? Like, I don't know. In the ideal world... yes. The issue with the delegate system, in my opinion, right, is, and this is both sides, not exclusive to one side, is the people who are showing up to the caucus and becoming, Democrats, or like a Democrat delegate or a Republican delegate, right? They are already very involved and they have their beliefs kind of set, right? That's a good point.
So
you don't see a lot of moderates showing up to the
caucus. No, you don't see a lot of moderates, and the moderates are a significant portion of the population, right? Yeah. And what kind of happens is...
We need more radicalized moderates, okay? Like, if you're not involved in politics, like, just get mad.
Yes. But, so here's where the issue comes, right? The people who are already set on these super strong beliefs on both sides, they're going to vote for the candidate who best aligns with those beliefs. But on both sides, generally that candidate won't necessarily align with the moderates as much, because...
I'm seeing that too.
Yeah. Because convention talking points are much different than election talking points.
Yeah.
Where a Republican candidate in a convention might say, let's deport everyone no matter what, whatever it is, right? And then on the flip side, in a Democrat convention, they're going to be like, let's abolish ICE, all this stuff, whatever. And then that appeals to the radicalization on both sides.
Do you feel like it de-radicalizes it to be doing like what you're doing, where it's like you're trying to run a Democratic campaign in a historically conservative area?
Yeah.
Because now you have to come off as kind of the middleman, and you have to appeal to the conservatives that historically have won this area.
Yep.
But also get through to the leftists who range from being, a centrist to being radicalized, extreme far left. And
yeah. So I myself is running as a moderate Democrat, right? And I say that because here's what I will say to the more left-leaning people in our district. Would you rather have a representative that's going to vote with what you want, 60 to 70% of the time? Or a representative that's going to vote with you maybe 1% of the time, right?
Yeah. How are you keeping track of that, though?
So that's what we're actually looking...
Where I come in.
Yep, that's where you're coming in.
Okay.
I'm also...
We'll get to that in a minute.
Yes. I'm also planning to do that with my campaign,
Sure.
What campaign promises I'm going to make, and then how do we, track that legislation and stuff like that. I want to just make a public dashboard where it's super easy to do what you're already doing.
Already got that for you, homie?
So that works for me.
You're going to love this.
Yes. But then for the, more moderate Republicans, or even, more right-leaning, way more right-leaning, my question for you guys is, we might not agree on everything, but, this area is been conservative for a very long time. How has that really necessarily helped you? And wouldn't you at least like a representative showing up to your door to ask you what you really care about? Because I'm going to vote the way that I think the district wants. I'm going to vote for what the people in the district want.
Yeah.
So that's where I am kind of challenging is, what can I do to help, right? Whereas, this conservative district, what has really been done for you? If you voted this way in the past, whereas we might not agree on everything, but at
you're
least
more like, I want to represent you, less about the party.
Yes,
whereas
exactly.
right now we have a party candidate who's very strictly in line with that party. How do we know that you're not going to get pulled into the part in line with the party over the people of this area? Like, how does that not go to your head and say, well, they wanted me. Obviously, I ran as a Democrat, so they wanted this. It's like,
yes. So what I will say to that is that does happen all the time across the country, with
we
candidates.
should have term limits, right?
Yes, I agree.
Okay.
So, with the term limits, I'll actually go into that in a second.
I just feel like it's one of those things where it gets worse is the longer you're in it, and maybe overturning these seats happens with just flipping a district,
Yep. Because what I would like to do is, I've already made it clear to the DFL, and they've endorsed me. But before they even endorsed me, I have said to them, I will not vote with you on every single issue, right?
Sure.
And I have made that clear to the party, right?
It's understandable in a conservative area where you're going to have to represent people that...
So there is a difference between a city Democrat and a suburban Democrat, right?
Sure.
City issues are not necessarily suburban issues.
Yeah, that's true.
And if I think that if a bill that is being proposed harms my district, even if it follows a party line, I will not vote for it. Because I am here to serve the people and help the people.
Okay.
Putting the people first.
Fair enough, yeah. I think that's great. Yeah, well, let's dig into this. I'll show you some of the stuff. Like, do you have any other obstacles that you have been facing? Because where I was getting at with getting involved with the Democratic caucus was I noticed this disorganization and immediately started to kind of shift gears on this party idea. This the whole purpose of this site was originally to be a new political party where we'd have new candidates running, and just the general gist of it would be, I'm going to do what you tell me to do, and we're going to keep track of it all in this app. So voters can log in, they can vote, they can tell their politicians how to vote. When you got to go and actually sign a voter, you know, yay or nay, we're gonna keep track of that. So like you say, okay, your constituents say you need to vote this way. Did you do that? Yes or no? That's a simple.
And then that tracks.
You know, so we can keep track of voting record on how in line you are with voting, but that takes time. So we don't really have a party. I don't really have a social media site, or I don't have the people in it. It's like how do we get from that point to that point? You know what I mean? And I think the best way to do this is to maybe drive that wedge by getting Republican and Democratic and independent candidates that are saying we need to tackle the corruption, we need to fight the money. Get them to come and sign up for this. So then when you go out, you register your profile, so you've got your candidate profile. When you go out and knock doors, you can say, well, if you sign up on this app, you can come in here, you can vote, you can tell me how you want me to vote on an issue. And I think that gives you a tool that nobody else has. Nobody's doing anything like that right now. This puts so much of the voice back on the voter. And it also really eliminates the need for money in politics, because if you're going to represent your people and you're always in line with them, you're going to get a good grade. And why would you ever want to get rid of a good politician if they're always listening to what their people are telling them? And why would you ever want to vote for somebody else if they're not taking money from the special interest groups? So building that system to bridge that gap between what a politician wants and what a constituent wants. And people can be as involved as much or as little as they want. You know, I think like we're all kind of addicted to these social media apps anyway, so we might as well have like a news feed where maybe people can get information. You know, there's, I think a big massive piece of this is beyond politics. It's the media aspect of it, because how does a voter make an informed decision if we're drowning in propaganda?
Because what I'm trying to do for my campaign is, have you heard of the fireside chats that FDR did?
No.
So basically, he would sit down, get on the radio, and just explain what was happening, right?
Sure.
And I kind of want to do something similar with bills and just kind of simplify the bill and what this truly is. Because
a quick little 10-minute video. Just say, this is what I read. This is how I'm interpreting it. What do you guys think?
Exactly, because, you know, your average person does not have the time to sit down and read every single bill.
That's the whole point of a representative democracy is you want to pick somebody that you trust to represent you. But I think that there are people that want to get a little more involved, and I think the people that are more involved really want to get feedback from the people that they're representing. If you were to get the money out of the equation, I think that's what a democracy is about. So I think that's a great option. And, you know, I think like I'd even be willing to help you set up something like that. Like I got obviously all this podcast type equipment stuff, but, you know, we could post that on your video on YouTube or on this app, and you can share it. So I don't really want to take on a whole lot of video storage right now with the app because for cost reasons. But if you put it on YouTube, I have an embedded YouTube player. So you can just say, all right, this is the bill. And then you can literally have a poll right below it that says, what do you think I should do, guys? You know, and I'll kind of walk through it. I think we're all kind of familiar with what a typical social media looks like. Over on the left here, these are all different things you can filter out. So these are all different post types that you can also find here. So you can do a regular post like within the party, private between your friends, or you can do a public article. And I even have this set up where you can type in, you know, whatever you want your title to be. You put it in and you can hit generate, and this will actually feed back to my ChatGPT API call. It'll generate the whole article, and you can go in and you can kind of write it. Either like you can build off of what the AI can come up with, or you can try to just write your own article if you you know if you want to write. One of the beautiful things about this app is I don't ever want to have ads on it. I don't want to ever incorporate ads as a part of it, because I feel like fundamentally that could sway the party's influence in favor of a donor. So I want to run a grassroots campaign too, where I get people on like $10 a month. You can get some extra features, you know, maybe
something
you
like
can customize it a little bit.
Wikipedia, where that's just informing people.
So I have like light mode, dark mode you might get for free, but then I've got like this mode where you know, you can change the style of it, or like maybe get a couple different ones in here, different options. But also you'd have your public profile. So you probably don't remember MySpace, but I'm sure you've heard of it, right?
I've heard of it, yeah.
That was my jam back in the day. That was my hustle. I used to charge bands like $200 to $300 to customize their MySpace profile. This was like building a website before like Wix and stuff. This was like everybody for music, they all wanted to be on MySpace anyway. Yep. So you'd have your player, so I did like, you could have a song, you could have a YouTube thing, a photo gallery, or a news feed, essentially the stuff that you're sharing. But basically there's some customization stuff. I can take it off this mode, but and then you can buy some of these modules. So like with the plus version of it, like there might be premium things where you can get a verified badge or some kind of that's essentially how I'm going to raise money to I don't really want to make money off of it,
because you're just trying to make money to cover the costs.
I want to cover the development costs, and then anything else I make back in that, I'm just going to put it right back into promoting the party itself. Okay. So like paid ads on other social media sites, trying to bring people into this. But I'm not even ready to even take money yet, so I'm not even at that point. But for you have a different way of administering this. You'd have your personal profile and a public profile. But what I'm trying to do is import all the candidates first, so that there's a claim process where you would come in and you would have to figure that out. How about before I get too ahead of myself, I'm going to come back here and just make sure I go through all this stuff. So this is an event post. So you can go to like event type here, and you can do an event that has dates, times, all this stuff, and you can hit post and you can see, okay, this is an actual event. If you're interested in coming to it, this is there's going to be a No Kings protest nationwide on March 28th. This is Debbie Russell's putting this on for the progressives in this area. Basically, this is going to be over in Elk River. So you can get to the Mobilize link here. You can click it. It brings you to the site where you can register. This would be an example of an article. This is something that I saw. We don't have to get too off topic, but basically I found out that a lot of states have laws that don't allow corporations to boycott Israel for some reason. And, it's like they can't get government money if they do. I just find that really weird. It's just one of those, like, why do we need that? Like, is there have you ever heard of a law like that before? No. Yeah, it's so odd. And then you've got a lot of this is just me test posting, so we don't have to go too into that. But I do have like a roadmap here of like where I've gotten in terms of what we've built out. So right now I'm kind of past election listings, and I've finished political profiles. So that was the thing I wanted to finish before I started doing the podcast, because we're going to walk through how to register that profile. And I even got through some of the endorsement process. Like, we'll see if we can actually get that to work, but that's kind of where I've ended at this. So the next thing would be figuring out the delegate step. That's why I was kind of bringing that up. Like, how do we incorporate delegates into this without, we don't want to make their information public. I don't even have that information, but like, it'd be kind of cool to have delegates sign up, and then maybe they could pledge their support to candidates, and you can keep track of it this way. Or, you know what I mean? Something like that in the long run. Something to keep funneling people back to your campaign and what you're talking about. So I do have sort of a net worth tracker and an insider trading watch. It doesn't seem to always work on everyone, but I could show it to you. And then campaign promises, like you were just talking about. I haven't quite built that yet, but that's going to be a part of it, where once you register a profile, you can put your campaign promises in there, and then people can vote on whether you kept it or not. So I have a live, the same way OBS works over here, where I can record my screen. You can set it up to go live on here. So we could even do live debates. I haven't tested that entirely yet, but I would love to maybe do a mock debate sometime or something. You have your friends list, of course. Most of these are fake profiles that I've set up just for testing. You can find your friends. You have a messaging system built in here. I don't have any messages because I'm the only person in it right now. And then you have, these are the kind of more data tools that I think this is where you're going to start to see some value in this. Okay. So current reps is everybody I have in the database so far. I think it's more than 600 at this point, but you also have the candidates in your area. So if I put my zip code in here, I can find all the candidates that pull up in my area, and you can see the grade that they're getting, essentially. Now, I wouldn't take any of this data too seriously yet. Because I'm still populating the database, and one of the things that I'm trying to find here is somebody that's willing to help me with that. Because populating the database is like, it's like the peak of where I've gotten without automating everything. Like I can't just run a command and just have it pull in all the information that I want. It's just not that it's not that good yet. But I do have a lot of data tools that I'll show you on the back end on how you can like edit and moderate some of this stuff. So down here, you'd have a list of all the candidates. So we could just look up Trump. Basically, you can kind of see some of the, what I call special interest groups, SIGs, PACs, and then I call them ACEs. ACEs would be like an endorsement from the anti-corruption party, anti-corruption endorsement. So if you take an endorsement, like a pledge, I got these 3 set up as an example. Let's say you just take a quick little video and you say, Smyth, I'm running for, blank in this district. I pledge my campaign will not accept, coordinate, or benefit with any super PAC, dark money, or outside spending organization. So you read that off, you post the video, and you can get a badge on your profile. And it helps your letter grade. So all of a sudden your grade goes up in the ranking. So whoever has the best grade by the time you hit that election, that's gonna come to you in the form of a sample ballot. So you'll get an email right before voting, every voter that's in the system. If you put your address in it, it'll say, all right, these are all the candidates that are running. These are the people you want to vote for. And it won't have anything to do with whatever party you're running for. It'll just say, you've scored the highest. You have a A, you have a B, you have a whatever. And then when you just bring that with you to the ballot, and you don't even have to necessarily pay attention to the politics. You just have to kind of register. So if you're not into politics, if you want to know who the least corrupt candidates are, you can kind of let the people of your community figure that out. The people that want to be involved and that want to kind of interact about this stuff. So then you have interest groups. So these would be like all of the different, so like at a higher level, I don't think you're dealing with any super PACs, but at a higher level, you got to kind of analyze how bad are these PACs, how bad are these groups, because some of the special interest groups are people like labor unions, the teachers union. It's like they're not the bad guys. Maybe they're, I don't know, but
depends on who you are.
So I want to leave that up to other people. I don't want AI to figure that out, and I don't really want me to set that tone necessarily. But just to get data in here, I set up AI as like a one user, it carries the weight of one user to just set an initial grade. But everything else is based off of who comes into this PAC and grades it on a -50 to +50. So if you drop a community grade here, it submits it and it says, all right, this is how bad it is. So if now if all of a sudden a politician takes money from this super PAC, you'll see their PAC tags show up next to their name. And it'll take into account how much money they took. And how bad that super PAC is. So that's how comprehensive I've gotten with the grading system. Over how how bad a politician is. Maybe I should go back to an actual page to show you kind of what somebody's looks like. So as an unclaimed profile, they'll have a black and white picture if I was able to pull it or not. They can claim this page, and if I have their email on file, it shows up right here. They can send the email to themselves and they can register it. If they don't have an email on file, they'll have to put it in and I have to manually approve it.
I see.
So that's kind of where I want to try to filter out some of the spam eventually, so like only the people with the official email can register the profile.
That makes sense.
Or automatically register it without having to moderate it. I'm going to pick on Nancy Pelosi because I know that's one where it's working. We got to keep it a little fair and balanced, right? So Nancy Pelosi is infamous for trading. She knows things. She was the Speaker of the House. At that level, you're very connected. You know what's going on. So she knew how to make certain technology advancements ahead of time, and a lot of people have accused her of this. So when you can pull in the trading information, this is from a site that does copy trading. So have you ever heard of that?
I have,
Where you copy somebody like Nancy Pelosi's entire stock portfolio, and you don't have to know the inside information, but you get to reap all the benefits. Well, there's a whole bunch of APIs out there that track this stuff religiously. And so I tapped into one of those APIs and I was able to pull in all of this data essentially, but it doesn't work for everyone yet. And then you can kind of see the grade breakdown of like how much is based off data, how much is based off pledges, how much is based off sponsors. And then also you have an 85, 10, and a 5% community grade. So right now the community grade's only at 5% of the weight. Eventually I want that to be a little bit higher. But we don't have a lot of people in here right now. We have nobody in here right now. So once we get more people in here actually grading things out, that'll play a bigger role in it. But for now, I just kind of want the data that AI and these scraping services are able to pull in to kind of be a reflection of where they're at, so that people can see something and not just have. So that's why I say take it with a grain of salt. None of this. I'm not accusing her of this, but I know a lot of people have, and this is just kind of an example. But we'll give her a D. Just I don't know.
Is the goal to prevent people in Congress or politicians from holding stocks in the first place?
Well, one of those pledges would be to divest stocks into something that's not influenceable.
So, for me, example, let's say I get elected. Would it be fine if I gave my stocks to a blind trust?
Yeah, that's what I would be expecting somebody to do.
Yeah, that's what I would. I mean, I don't really have any stocks, but
Well, and I mean, even at that level, it's like you can't really just look at the financial data and be like, well, just because they have stocks means they're corrupt. It doesn't. It means you have to have a suspicious trade. You have to have something to happen. How did you know about that? How did you know that was going to happen? So there sort of has to be a system to approve it. So this is something where you could flag it, but we'd still want to validate it on the back end. Or, if you had a lot of people flagging a certain person, you'd have, essentially the whole thing is designed to be the best friend of a grassroots candidate who needs it, and the worst enemy for the people that are corrupt. So if you're on the other end of it where you've been doing, up to shenanigans or whatever, it's you're never going to be able to dig your way out of that. She would have to go and take a bunch of these pledges, but how do you do that when you've already taken that money? You have to pledge not to take anything else. How do you dig yourself out of that hole? And getting these career politicians out is a big goal of it. I think just the longer you're in this, I don't know, this doesn't show the chart, but you can just see it go from nothing to
on a salary of $150K, you're making $1 million.
So then you got donors. So again, I haven't scraped every single super PAC out there yet, but I have scraped quite a few. A lot of the ones that I did scrape were from Track APAC. So from there I was able to build my entire database of populated House of Representative candidates. So I got all the senators in the House, because there's just so many of them. I was like, well, there's only a dozen or two left that haven't. So I'm like, well, just fill in the rest of this list and we'll just give them a APAC pledge or something. So or whatever the endorsement is. So you can see all of the different PACs that she's been taking money from.
This is all 2024?
Yeah, so it'd say
it in 92 million in 2024.
It's probably more like the 3 million.
Okay, I see.
I think the 92 might be taking into consideration stocks, because I think her stocks are a lot higher than this too, or her net worth. The problem is this doesn't also take into an account her husband. Because I don't think the accusations are really against her as much as it is her husband, because he's the one who's doing the actual trading.
But what's stopping her from hey?
From what I know very little. If I'm wrong about, just don't take my word on it.
I get that.
This is all, I'm just making it up. So to go, I think we've kind of covered this a little bit, what the, how these essentially work. But if a user wants to come in and rank a certain particular PAC worse, the worse it gets, the more bad it is to take money from that PAC. And then on the flip side of it, you'd have green things. These green ones are going to be reform aligned. These are going to be getting new people in. I think if I go down more, you'll see Medicare and Citizens United. So on the positive side of it, if you are for that cause, this could make a big benefit for you. So if you go and pledge it, I will vote against ending Citizens United. Not that I really think that's something that applies to your district, but you could still make that pledge and it would still help your grade, because you never know. This is your profile beyond just this campaign, just beyond just this election. So it kind of covers your whole history. So the longer you've been in this, the more it looks like you've made, and the more you should probably get out and let somebody else have a turn. So then you got elections. This is where you can mash up basically every seat in the House, every seat you have that's coming up. right now, gets into where the district is really hard. So I don't have an API that will outline this district.
Yep.
So when you drop a pin on this map, it will say, okay, like we might be like somewhere right in here.
Yep.
But if I can't do that without just putting in my zip code. Now, if I don't have all these mapped out in different layers for every different district at every different level, I can't necessarily just pinpoint every one of your candidates.
Yeah,
but there is a way to do it, and I'm going to figure it out.
because the 30A and 30B, that zip code is 55330 for both, up there in Otsego. But what
exactly.
side?
I see. When I do my district, that could cover Buffalo, that could cover, whatever.
Yeah.
So right now it just picks the state, and it gives you all the state candidates.
Yep.
So you're going to see way more candidates on here than you'll see when you go to vote. Like I'll have this figured out by the time we vote.
Yep.
And it'll be accurate, and this will be community graded, and I want this is like by November 2nd. I want everything on this bulletproof, and I want like thousands of hundreds of millions of billions of zillions of people using it. So however many we can get. You'll see the different numbers here though. So right now, if you wanted to look at it, you'd have to figure out, okay, we're in the 6th district. So we could view this race and we could see who's going up against good old Tom Emmer. It doesn't have everybody in here. I was going to add Jeremy to the list here today. But normally you would see him in here. What does it have? Anson? Anson didn't make the cut. A lot of this has to do with where I pulled the information from. So I pulled the candidate information from, originally it started with the Track Apex site, and that was scraping it. And then I started to find out, okay, well, they're just pulling it from the FEC site. So then it was like I could pull anybody in Minnesota that had an FEC registered number. And I'm guessing you don't, because you did not show up in that list.
When did you pull it?
It would have been probably last week. Because all 3 of these features I just built in the last week.
Yeah. Because that's just federal, I believe, right?
Probably federal. Exchange commissions.
Because with my campaign...
So that wouldn't apply to you, would it?
With my campaign account, I had to create an EIN number of the IRS and register a nonprofit corporation with the Minnesota Secretary of State.
Okay.
And then I also had to get in touch with the public finance, reform with...
Do you have to report your finances?
Yeah, so all of my...
To the state bureau? Yes. Some kind of state? Okay.
So
do you know if they make that information public?
I'm not sure on that, actually.
Because with the FEC, what's incredible is it's all public.
I'm willing to bet they do, but I will... I'll look into that, too, and I'll get back to you on that. But I know every expense that I have, and income that I take... is very well tracked. Like there is a lot of rules that I have.
And it doesn't need to necessarily be like the reason I started with the Track APAC was because I didn't want to go after all the money. Because when I looked at the FEC data, what I realized was it's not a whole picture. Like you can't paint a whole picture on somebody based off like their FEC data because it looks like this. I think if I go in here, let's see if I go to his page. If I go to his page, it should have his FEC link somewhere in here. Oh, Ballotpedia. Close enough. So then I started pulling data from here too, but even here it was like, I was just getting the FEC data. So then I started just getting it straight from the FEC data. And, oh God, it's all the way down here. Campaign contribution history. So you could see like how much they've taken, how much the expenditures are, but you're not seeing like how much of that was grassroots, how much of that was the super PAC, until you go through all of the data. So basically, I'm trying to build a better tracking system for pulling in all of that. Like with FEC, you can go as far as looking up every single donation that was ever made. You can see the names of the people that made every. If you ever made a donation to a public candidate that's in the FEC, like a federal candidate. Your name's out there in that law, but you could compile a list of how many times a super PAC overlaps with a certain candidate, and then cross-track that with every candidate and be like, okay, well, they put this much money in.
Because the issue with that stuff is like, federal candidates, they're bringing in millions of dollars, and it's like spreadsheet after spreadsheet of tracking, right? So that would be very difficult to track.
Is this the last vote? Oh, 2016.
Yeah.
That was a bad year. That's probably not a very good comparison. 2020, like that gap's been closing. I know you're not against Tom Emmer. That's not your race. That'd be Jeremy. But I want to see what the most recent one is now. See, I get lost in this stuff. I think.
Yeah.
Let's see, 37, 62. That's what I remember hearing. Mm-hmm. So that's gotten a little better. Anyway, let's see. So going back to the election mashup, I'm trying to see if there's anything else that you would need to see in here. I guess where I want to keep building this out is building into your district. So like the House committee. So like once we build into the lower states of this, I don't know if that's going to show up in here today.
Yeah.
But what I do want to do next is, unless you have any other questions about like the front end, this is like the user side of it.
Are you going to expand to even more local races? So like city council, school board, sheriff, stuff like that?
I'd like to.
Okay.
It's tough though.
Yeah, it's just... The more that's like an exponential amount of data.
It'll probably be Minnesota because I'm getting the feeling that this is just going to be kind of a Minnesota thing to start out with, unless it really goes viral or something. I might just populate with just the Minnesota records because every state does every single one of these things differently. Mm-hmm. And it drives me, they all have different names for it. They all have different, different, it gets crazy, crazy, chaotic.
Yeah.
So I did post, I think it's on the front end here, if anybody from out of the state, and eventually we'll hit this point, but if anybody from out of the state wants to help, maybe it's gone. I had a poll, I will have this in here, but it was a volunteer link.
Yeah.
So you can sign up to volunteer right within the site. This particular link was for a state database administrator.
Okay.
So my theory is that if I can get, or like my goal eventually is to get one person in each state to volunteer to be the state database administrator. It's probably better for a moderate type person because I don't want anybody like messing with names and stuff, but you'd be the person making sure the candidates are in the system.
Yep.
So making sure that, every single city hall, every single town hall, like there's got to be ways to get this data. Mm-hmm. I just need people in different states to kind of help me figure it out and mainly be responsible for it because you're hitting a moving target. Like candidates are constantly changing.
Oh, yeah.
So, and then anytime we post information about a candidate, they can come back and be like, hey, no, that's wrong.
Yep.
So I need to have somebody responsible for updating that. Like I can make claims and say if I'm wrong about something, like if anything I've posted on any of these videos is inaccurate, you can come in and flag it and you can, basically you can tell me if you see the information is wrong. Actually, you have to claim the page first. But once you claim the page, you'd be able to say report inaccurate data. Like if it said you were a billionaire and it was just wrong, like you would want to claim, like it's an understandable mistake. I'm not trying to do that, but it's just I'm just kind of trusting the data that AI is pulled in and that scraping services is pulled in. But even that could be inaccurate. It could be out of date. It could be
not updated, hour by hour.
Yeah. So that's always hitting a moving target, and that's where I want to get. I built tools into the system for pulling in this type of information. Mm-hmm. So I'm the administrator for the profile. So I'm going to go over the back end now and some of the things you could see behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. The dashboard is really just for me to see how many people are signed up and using it and whatnot.
Yep.
Moderation would be if somebody posts something like offensive or violent or that needs to go, you can flag it. So moderators will have access to this admin panel, and they'd be able to see the moderation tab. Mm-hmm. So then you could have polls where you could set up different, different polls that could be featured on the site. These would be like administrative polls versus user polls. So administrative polls would be like a vote is coming up. We need your input on it. Mm-hmm. I want to put those in. This is the AI writer, that article thing that I told you. Mm-hmm. Like it gives it a pre-prompt, and I want people to see this. And this is how committed I am to being objective here. This is all of the pre-prompting stuff that you would see prior to a ChatGPT prompt. And other than that, it has no opinion on anything regardless. Mm-hmm. One of the reasons I like the idea of an AI article, normally I'm kind of opposed to senseless uses of AI. Yep. But AI has a unique ability to be objective about things. Yep. Like you can say, give me an objective take on what's happening in the news today. And it's going to say, okay, well, some people are saying this, some people are saying that. And, you're kind of going to get both sides of it. So I think some people might like that. Yeah. And I think that's a great way to get the information without having to have someone's opinions just shoved down your throat. Yeah. Because that gets obnoxious. And then you get into this echo chamber of how can we use the media side of this app to sort of break people away from that echo chamber and like just give people the facts. Maybe it's not as interesting. Maybe it's not the confirmation bias that you wanted, but go get that on Facebook. Go get that on TikTok. I don't give a shit. Like, I want to try to keep reasonable, level-headed people here and keep the crazy people out. So then I have user management. Again, I think it's, you got a registered user here. Other than that, it's mostly me testing it, but sometimes you need to have user management. I can't see people's passwords, but I can see the registration IP. Not to dox you there, but the point behind that being is that I want to see if people are bots registering their account from a different country. Bots are going to be a big challenge in building this because we can't have them influencing votes. So we have to have some types of verification measures in place. Like there are, I have an idea for eventually having a face verification API. There's a service out there where I don't even ever need your ID or any of your information or anything. But you can tap into that and they can verify that you're a real person and you can get that check mark on your account as a voter that says, hey, I'm a real person. And basically, even to the point of maybe saying I'm a registered voter. Like this could maybe eliminate the need for a voter ID role or something because you'd have to upload an ID in order to become a verified citizen. So it's kind of a controversial issue within the party. So I have to kind of split up votes between verified citizens, voting citizens, registered voters, just like you said with the DFL would have a registration of voters, right? I have to know who's a registered voter and who's just a regular citizen. So there's sort of this elevation of privileges within the system to verify. But that's got to give you some more information because what if a whole bunch of bots come in and say, okay, well, they told me I should vote this way on it, so I'm going to just, ignore what the people really want. But really the number of registered voters who verified themselves are actually voting differently. So that should give you a fair, accurate reflection where you can say, okay, I can trust the people that are telling me how to vote on this are really from this area. So I built data tools into politicians, special interest groups, state data, the trading flags, and the pledges. These are the tools that a database administrator would use to try to build in basically the positions for the state. So you'd see, like Governor of Minnesota, right? That's a real position. So then you have profiles. Profiles would be the candidates themselves. So you'll have, people like Tim Walz, because he's the governor, right? So we'll talk about him. Again, don't take the numbers too seriously, but some of this could be grassroots funding. Some of this could be from super PACs, but generally the letter grade won't be impacted unless it says it's from super PACs. So you'll sometimes see candidates with a lot of money, and it was all grassroots. Adelita Grijalva is a great example. She was going to vote for the discharge position on the Epstein paperwork. So she was a very popular candidate in the special election, and she was the one seat that would flip that vote. She didn't need to take any money from super PACs, but her numbers come up 3.5 million. So that was all grassroots funding because everybody wanted to see the files. So you get you gotta take certain things into context. So I have regrade all profiles. That takes all the information that's in the database and automatically reassigns its letter grade. So as I put more and more data in, this becomes more and more accurate. So right now we're at the beginning. Take it with a grain of salt. By the time we get to voting, I want this to be like down to a penny. It's not going to be easy, but all these tools, and I can build in more tools as I go to like organize this data. I can update the Track APAC site from my original scraper. I can refresh from the web. This would be if you have an FEC profile, it pulls in things like the picture and all the stuff. I can have it scan for missing states because when I tried to generate the handle for people, it wouldn't always put the handle on it. Like I think this one might be even missing it. So I can do, it wouldn't do this because they didn't have the state, because the handle was going to be first name, last name, state. And then I figured we wouldn't have too many overlaps. Right? And then whenever you're typing, whenever a user's typing, they can type at Tim Walz MN and they tag his profile. So now whenever somebody tags that profile, you can go to Tim Walz's profile and you can see every public thing that anybody's ever posted about him. So you can see this constant feed. And the only way to get it off that main feed page is to claim the profile.
I see.
It's kind of clever because we're just going to let the community talk about the politicians that haven't claimed the profiles yet. And if they want to actually have their own custom widgets on the front end of the page, they have to claim it.
Yep.
So this kind of forces politicians into like, okay, even if I don't like this app, I should register for it because then I can control what people are, seeing at first glance, and they have to click off of it. I'll show you that when we get to your profile. But so then I have a missing info tab. So if like it'll scan the database, see if the state's missing or if a grade's missing or something. And then you have the claims page. So the claims page is where you can, as a user, can go and try to claim your political profile. And if I don't have your email, like if there's no verification in place, it comes in here and I have to manually approve it.
Okay.
So that's where a state database administrator would need to get the politician access to their profile.
Yep.
Because they need to have the ability to change it as soon as they register for it, right? But I don't necessarily have everyone's email.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my way of managing that. I know some of this stuff's a little overkill, a little confusing, but I'm kind of just so I get it out there how everything works.
Yeah.
This is the special interest groups page. I got 246, but I just found a massive database from the FEC site that has every single PAC that's ever registered.
Okay.
And a total of how much they've spent.
Interesting.
So that's like 7,000.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have a lot more very soon. And I also have different tools. I can grade it using AI, so it gives it that initial one. It's the same thing as one user, so it can very easily be swayed if people register and go in there and start grading these things. I can have it find missing CID numbers. The CID number is how you get to the FEC Super PAC for it. That's where it pulls in all that information. So it'll tell you exactly what the name is, what the code is, how much they've spent, how much they've received. Right now it only pulls it in for 2025, 2026. So again, like you kind of get, when you see these numbers, this is how much they've spent more recently. So you can kind of grade these. I know you're going to see a couple different types of things in here. You'll see super PACs for one. Obviously, those are the big things we want to keep track of, who's spending that money. But you also have pledges and neutral credits. So like a labor union would be like neutral. And that's because I don't know that labor union. I don't know if they're corrupt.
Yeah.
I'm not going to make that call. I'm going to let people make that call. So I want to leave some of that stuff. This is a grassroots organization campaign. I know it's one, it's a politically endorsed one, but Citizens Against APAC would be against a PAC, so I would consider it an endorsement.
Yep.
Like if you were to just take the pledge and Citizens United or no super PACs, you get this shiny little badge on the front of your page and it helps you grade, like I said before, but it depends on how much people weight it. So if you think the Green New Deal is a good thing, go out there, rate it, and maybe you think it's a bad thing. And so it kind of becomes this tug of war of, how bad is it? Like, are we really going to get conservatives to go out of their way to go and force a downvote on the Green New Deal? Maybe they hate it that much, but I think more people would be in favor of it. I think they'd probably be more likely to go to NRA and say, that's a good thing. Let's move that up, So there's kind of the political issues kind of as the tug of war in the middle, but the endorsements are the things that like we want to add manually. So if you take that pledge, you say that on camera and we put it next to your badge, you get that that extra grade. No APAC money, no closed door funding, no fossil fuel money, no lobbying. So I have a handful of these endorsements. I call them ACEs. ACEs and SIGs. The SIGs would be the special interest groups, PACs, and so you'll kind of see those endorsements all over the place because that's how we're really tracking the grading. Yeah. State data, like I said, every single state has a different type of election. So that's all this one is. The trading flags would be if you want to flag somebody for, this tells us, okay, this was the amount, this is how much, somebody would have to review this trade and see if it was sketchy. The pledges, it's kind of the same thing, but I think this is for once people start actually getting them, they'll fill in here. So I have some security tools here. I don't want to go over this too much, but vibe coding kind of gets this bad reputation for being notoriously insecure. That all comes down to how much of a commitment you make to the security. And I've built apps before where it's like I have to go to a developer to do every little thing. And I can tell you beyond any reasonable doubt, this is more secure than that just because I take the time to go through the security protocols. Like I know how to analyze the app. I use third-party tools to reference the site and make sure that it's like bulletproof.
Yeah.
I want this to be safe as hell. There's a couple things that we could probably button up, like with two-factor authentication. I don't have it texting yet, so I just have that kind of turned off.
Okay.
That kind of stuff. But that's going to come with
Time and
I need a little money to invest in it too. You know, because you have to have paid APIs for all of this stuff. So every single one of these things is like $10 a month. And then you'd be surprised at how little I've spent in the AI credits to build it.
Yeah.
And how much more it is coming back to like getting data and basically the security aspect of it too. So I follow the security guidelines and protocols. I'm constantly monitoring that stuff. It is. I'm confident it's a secure app at this point. But if somebody can also find a exploit in it too, like, you know, let me know, because we want to patch it. But
Yep.
you know, I'm pretty confident in the security at this point. I think once more people get into it, we'll have that two-factor authentication option, and that'll be better. So one thing that I thought would be kind of neat is, have you ever thought of like, why can't you custom tweak your own algorithm in a social media app?
Yeah.
And it's because like they want to show you ads, so they want whatever's going to work the best. They think they know what's best, right? But in an app where you don't have ads, I never want to have ads in this ever, because if we do that, it'll sway the party.
Yep.
So I want this to be community funded, even if I never make a penny off of it. I'd rather just keep throwing money at it and just keep it. You know, I don't really need that money as much as Facebook does. They're a business. Like, I want this to be a nonprofit, right?
Yep.
But why wouldn't you be able to just tweak your own algorithm? Like, you know, I think part of the problem with these social media sites is the algorithms are programmed to be addictive. Like, they want to show you the most controversial, like, infuriating stuff because it gets you engaged, it gets you commenting, it gets you, you know, whatever. And it's like digital crack. So, but, you know, what if we want to have legitimate discussions about politics? What if we just want a tool for that and we want to use that news feed style? You know? This isn't available for users yet. I'm kind of debating on whether or not I would want that to be like a paid feature, or just give that to everybody. And allow people to have this type of, you know, you can just log in here and you can say, well, how much does the weight of a like, you know, how much does verified users boost a post? Because, you know, you don't want to be reading bot stuff. Maybe the bots are getting out of control and you want to make sure you're only seeing stuff from verified users. So you
bump it up.
Like, have you ever heard of anything like that?
Not really, no.
It'd be kind of like tweaking your For You page or whatever. So then this is kind of, once I do get subscriptions, this would be like my dashboard for managing how many people have subscribed. And the settings this isn't anything yet. This was actually just part of the original setup.
Okay.
But yeah, so now once we're going to go through let's just create your profile.
Okay.
So we're going to start by creating your position. And first we want to check and see if that position's in here. This would be, what is your house seat?
State House, District 30A.
Okay, so 30A is not in here. State House, Minnesota State Senate District 30. Is that close?
I mean, that's the state senate, You just
There'd be two though, right?
Yep, you just District 30A and District 30B.
Okay, so we're just going to copy this. Create position, 30A.
And then change the Senate part to House.
House, yep. Claim this profile. Now, do you want to type that same email in?
Yep.
Okay, so the claim request has been sent.
All right.
So now, and now you see your name there, right? If I hit approve,
Yep.
I go back to site. I leave this. We refresh here. Now you can see these two buttons that were not here before.
Yep.
Edit candidate profile and view candidate profile. We start with view it. And we're already on it. So let's just say we're at the feed. You get view candidate profile.
Okay.
So you'll see some of those same things. But you'll notice right here it says candidate profile instead of news feed.
Okay.
Now if you're on a different candidate, it'll start with news feed.
Yep.
So whatever anybody's saying about you is just going to be right there. Now for you got candidate profile, so you can hit edit.
Yep.
And you can add the same modules that you can add on a personal profile, except you get these ones, the ACE badges. So the ACE badge would be, let's say, no super PAC money.
Yep.
No super PAC pledge. Let's say you just uploaded that that video
Yep.
Submit pledge, and that's probably not going to work. But basically, then what you would do is you get the badge down here that says I took the No Super PAC pledge, and then there would be a link to that video of you saying what's on that sheet right there, saying that you're not going to take money from super PACs.
Okay.
The worst thing you could do in the whole party is say you're not going to take the money
and then take the money. Yeah.
So don't do that.
I won't do that. Yeah.
It's going to be a hard hole to dig yourself out of.
Yes.
But basically, yeah, that's the gist of it, and you can suggest request changes here. So now this unlocks that ability. So if something was incorrect on any of this, you could request that change.
Yeah. And
that also comes into the request on the back end too. So you can add other things to this too, and you can customize it like, like if you ever did a debate, a campaign hub, like some of the, like, what a political compass is, like where they have the X, Y. I always think that's a great way to see where someone's at.
Yeah.
I think everybody's kind of got a relative idea of, where we sit and like where we should be. I kind of think like a lot of times in theory, I think we should be kind of right in the middle, but I think like our country's kind of off center as it is. So we kind of need to get back to the middle, which is everybody's kind of arguing over how do we get back to that middle. Some people think we got to go back in time and roll back, decades of progress. Some people think it's the opposite. And we just need to keep more progress or whatever. But basically like it's good to see where people are at. Like if everybody takes the same test, you can see everybody on that same benchmark, right? And I think that'd be a great tool for somebody that's coming along and just doing research on a candidate to say, well, where does Joey sit? So that's kind of the whole gist of it is once you have access to this, you can basically customize this page and then people will see your profile over here. They'll see all the stuff that you want to show. You can put whatever contact info you want in there. You can completely customize it, but now you can go around and you can invite people to this app. Yeah. So when it comes time to go door to door, you say, all right, this is my profile. Look at all these badges. I'm anti-corruption. I'm against the super PACs and the money in politics. Like they see that stuff. They don't give two shits if you're a Democrat or a Republican. Around here, I don't think people are going to care. I think that saying that you're going to tackle the corruption, I think you're going to get through to people, and they'll. That's how you really win in these areas. So I'm going to give you an A.
Well, thank you.
Actually, it's you giving you an A.
Okay. Yeah.
I'll have to get in there once, But it's okay. I give myself an A too.
Yes.
I'm A for anti-corruption.
Yes. Right? No doubt.
So. It's not going to pull anything for the donors, the trading, because you're not in those systems. But eventually you'll have campaign promises. That'll be another piece where you'll be able to fill that out. We can get you photos and some of that information in. Do you think this is a tool that you'd find useful?
I think so. The only issue I potentially see is you need to build it up to scale very quickly. It's, a really good concept, but like, let's say only, 200 people in my district are using it. The district is 60,000 people, the people, let's say I'm using this to vote on some of the issues. Oh, that's just 200 people who voted out of the 60,000. So I think you need to kind of, if we can get politicians and more people on board and spread it through word of mouth, instead of, as well with ads online and stuff like that.
Exactly.
Because, you can see an ad on Facebook or whatever and be like, oh, okay, cool. But then let's say, you're talking with your brother or whatever, and they're like, oh, hey, look at this for politics.
Yep.
And you already think, it's corrupt as hell. But then, someone close to you is like, oh, yeah, this is a cool tool how we're using to track it. You should sign up as well.
Yeah, exactly. That's the gist of it. I think if I just do enough of these interviews, I want to host knocking events too, where people do go out and knock doors in these areas. I want to have an event where I host it, we'll get some food and donuts or whatever, and just get a bunch of people into an area. And say, all right, I'm going to sponsor this event, but I want you guys to kind of lead with this and be try to get people to sign up. And whoever gets the most sign up, maybe give them something, I don't know. Try to just get some of the grassroots politicians that are putting in the legwork to give them the tools to use, first of all, but then also change it so that, they can really use this as an ongoing basis and build a name and a reputation And then stack that up to the people that aren't even going to bother with this. They're never going to even consider it.
Yeah.
Those people will eventually just get phased out, and hopefully we'll overturn those seats.
Yeah.
And get less corrupt candidates in power. I think. Do you think that this could, if in theory, if people picked up on it, and it really did take off, do you think it could remove the need for money in politics?
Not entirely.
Not entirely. Okay.
It's
fair enough.
Because, caring about a certain issue like anti-corruption, I think that's a very broad issue that a lot of people support, right?
Sure.
But that's not the only reason why people vote.
That's a good point.
Like a Democrat's probably going to vote for, like a universal health care or something, right?
Yep.
Where like if they see a candidate that's hitting more of their points, but they're taking money from super PACs,
Sure.
they're probably still going to vote for that candidate.
Yeah.
So I think this is a tool, that will be very useful for like those contested, primaries, right? Where you might have like in Illinois, there's a great example. There's a bunch of candidates in the primaries where, one candidate's a progressive Democrat and the other's a moderate Democrat, but one's taking money from super PACs.
Yeah,
that's the best example.
I watched an interesting video on her, and they were talking about the how APAC is basically funneling money through shell PACs. Like they're saying stuff like Progressive Americans, and but it's like you follow the money back, and it's like, oh shit, well, it's the same,
And they're very deceptive, like names, and they're also, one, spending money on attack ads, but then also spending money on a candidate who agrees with getting rid of APAC and stuff like that to try to split the vote.
Yeah.
Right?
It's almost like who's behind these attack ads, like what's a good ad and what's a bad ad? You know what I mean? Like if you're just going out there and saying, here, because I watched her ads, she shows up on my feed a lot, and I'm like, she seems like a community involved, like young progressive, and I think she's great. I love the message, but then I'm just, every time I hear anybody else talk about her, it's like they're talking about these attack ads, how much money they're spending against the progressive candidates. I'm like, I'm not seeing this kind of pushback, even, in our local races, but I think like it just goes to show how important the primaries are to these big foreign interest groups. Like right now, you got to think, if you're Israel, like keeping a good relationship with America is absolutely critical, and you're losing. Like the public perception is pretty much gone. And I think that's even without people fully like, I dug deep into the Epstein stuff. I know a lot of people have not, and that blows my mind that more people aren't aware of this stuff, but those connections run deep. And even without looking at those connections, the public perception on the APAC spending is pretty crazy. But it's also like this with every single PAC. There's the Koch brothers PAC has just been awful. You've got, the APAC's particularly bad because they're so universal on both sides. Like you'll see it all over the place on both sides, and it's like, well, how do you? Nobody's arguing.
What are your values?
Like if you're a big candidate that's got the money to take on an issue like that, you're not going to bite the hand that feeds. Because you're already getting that money, but at the same time, so is your competitor. So at the higher level, nobody wants to talk about this shit. But at the lower level, everybody's like, we know what the problem is, and
because there truthfully is, a certain amount of money that you need in every campaign. It's a much higher threshold at like federal campaigns. But even my campaign, I need something that's called the VAN. It's a voter access network. And basically it's just data on like, who likely Republicans are, or, who likely Democrats are, right? And it's just a good way to base of like what certain people are going to vote, because talking to 60,000 people, that's a lot of people, right? And it's a lot of information that, yes, you can definitely write down, but it's easier to have the program do it for you. But both sides have access to this. But
this is like a bipartisan tool that exists.
I think it's both sides have their version of it. I don't know if it's bipartisan, but it costs money to do. Like
it's like a slap in the face. Like
it's crazy. But the VAN, it costs $400, right? For just a state house candidate, and in the grand scheme of things, I am aware $400 is not like earth-shattering, right? But to me, I'm 22 years old. I don't have a ton of money, right? So it's like, I'm going to spend, $400 out of my paycheck when I have, car payments you need to buy, whatever you need to do to live, right? It's like, can I afford to use my personal money to, buy this thing that is a very useful tool for my campaign, right?
Have you had any success fundraising?
I've gotten a few donations. I think we're at $150.
Oh, okay.
So not too much. But we haven't been door knocking everyone yet because we just got endorsed and it's March.
You said, it's still focused on the delegates right now. So nobody's really. Yeah, and I also I'm in the same boat. Like, you don't ask for people money too early in the system, but.
And it's kind of like
how crucial is getting that data now versus like later in the campaign? You don't have a primary to win.
No, ideally we want to get it as early as possible, just because my campaign has the goal where we want to stop by every single house, before the 100-day mark.
60,000 houses.
What?
60,000.
Well, I don't know if it's actually 60,000 houses, but
in
60,000 people.
60,000. Okay.
So we would need to do that in the next 130 days.
Yeah.
Which doesn't sound impossible, but when I have
130 days till November?
Till that 100-day mark. So once we hit 130 days, it'd be 100 days from there to election, right? And the reason why we're setting that goal is because at around that 100-day mark, one, people are going to be more aware of the election that's coming, right? Mm-hmm. And two, by that point, we're going to have data of who's going to vote, where, who's going to vote for who, right?
Yeah.
Because,
historical data.
Yeah, ideally, I'd like to convince everyone to vote for me.
Who didn't vote?
What's that?
Does it help you see who didn't vote?
Yeah.
So you can kind of capture some of the moderates, maybe?
Yep.
Yeah.
And
I think that's where you're gonna win, because the Democrats are charged. They're gonna turn out and vote.
Yep.
They're gonna put anybody that's on, anybody whose name's on the ballot. They don't need to even know who you are.
Yep.
There's no convincing there. The Republicans, they're going to be harder to convince, obviously, but I don't think it's impossible.
No, and
I really don't.
I'm very confident in this campaign, but the reason why we're setting that goal is because, one, we'll kind of get where everyone stands, and if we even hit all the Democrats, we're more likely to get, volunteers and stuff like that out of them to make it even easier for that 100 days.
Do you think being taking pledges against the corruption, do you think that's going to make it easier to get volunteers?
Totally.
So I think I'm just kind of trying to analyze the campaign process for a grassroots candidate. It's you got to work with everything that you've got.
Yep.
So if we can build a tool, that's great. But also what can you lead with that separates you from the conventional stigma? I think most people, when they think, when they have negative thoughts about Democrats, it's the corruption, right?
Yep.
So if you're running against corruption, then that's instantly sets you apart from them.
Yep.
So you're not your typical Democrat, right?
Yep.
You're not, and I think that, to be fair, the same exact stuff's completely parallel on the right. There's corrupt Republicans and there's anti-corruption Republicans. So weeding them out is kind of an important piece, but, also I think one of the big differences that you said today that makes me feel more inclined to vote your way over a Republican is just that the guy that's in the campaign now is pretty unconditionally aligned with the party. And I know that there's a lot of people in this area that aren't always aligned with what the Republican Party wants, because it's kind of a battleground area. And, you said you would represent the people at the core. So do you think giving people a tool to communicate back with you would be something that's useful when you go out and door knock? Would that be something you'd be interested in?
Exactly. That would
working
be very
into the conversation,
I've already been doing that, not on the scale of this, but I have, an Excel document of the people I talk to. While I'm talking to, I don't add it, but in my mind, I'm
want to keep track of it.
I'm what issue is most important?
You want to get the people using it, but it's also a way for you to maybe keep track of some of those people. And I think, to circle back at the time of coming back to the election, to be able to get an email that just says, all right, here are the least corrupt candidates on your ballot. I think that's going to go a long way for the people that aren't, the moderates, the people that are in the middle that sometimes vote left, sometimes vote right, or maybe just don't vote at all. There's going to be people that want to get out. If somebody were to come to my house and say, this tool is going to tell you who is the least corrupt candidate, and this is how we're going to get money out of politics. You could tell it to the least political person in the world, and they're going to probably agree with it.
Because even people who don't vote, right, and people who are just as uninvolved in politics as they could be possibly be, right? Politics still does affect them, even if they're not involved in it, right?
That's true.
And everyone
You
agrees.
see that more when shit hits the fan.
Yep.
Like, that's what somebody said that, sorry to interrupt, but somebody
No,
said
you're
that at the DFL caucus event was like, you know, the reason this happens is because people get involved and then they fizzle out. And then it's like whenever things go back to normal, they just get uninvolved. And it's like, I was like, yeah, I kind of did that, didn't I?
Well, and, you know, I understand that it's a lot to, you know, track. There's so many issues that are changing literally day by day, right? But when it's not affecting your everyday life in a noticeable way, well, whatever, right?
Yeah. Sometimes getting involved in politics affects your life in a more negative way than if you...
It does.
It's like an intimidation thing.
And, you
I feel
know...
like people are really scared to get politically involved or even voice their political opinion because it's just so divisive. It's, you know, nobody wants that kind of negativity.
And that is true. I mean, how many, you know, family members, neighbors that, like, you know, you might have brought up politics once and you found that you really disagreed on whatever issue it is, and all of a sudden you don't really talk anymore.
Yeah. I've had people cut me out of their life, and I've had to cut some people out too. You know, sometimes the level of toxicity gets so bad, and you know, it's I don't ever really want that to be the case. I think, but you know, when polarizing things happen, people kind of jump to their whatever they believe, and
they do, but I think it's important that we try to go back to, hey, we're just neighbors. You know what? You might disagree with me on whatever issue it is, but at the end of the day, you and I are both human. We both live in the same area. We probably are, facing a lot of the problems. Let's not let that divide us. You know, because not to say that we should keep politics out of everything, but like the truth of the matter is, does it truly matter to you if, say, I didn't like how the school was spending the money on that particular thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, would that really destroy our relationship?
No, but if I went after your job and started, you know, doxing you, it's like that's where I always feel like that's where things go too far. You know, like when you're making it personal, like people need to know how to debate a little bit, stick to the topics, you know.
Have it civil and
bring it together. I think a lot of people really want things to they want the unity back. You know what I mean? We're the United States, not the red and blue states of America.
This is the land of opportunity, and the government should be a tool to expand that opportunity to as many people as possible.